morning. We are really excited to welcome you to our July 23rd Friday focus of our Extension Master Gardener program. And as I hope you can already tell, we have some friends from Texas that are on our call with us this morning. So we're really excited. Don't worry, we're going to get to them really soon. I just wanted to share a couple of things with you while our Texas friends are getting going on their computer and their meeting. We now have registration open for our Western Region Conference, which is going to be September 17th and 18th. It's going to be the last strand to Clarksville event. So we're really looking forward to our Montgomery County friends hosting us for an evening at Freedom Point. This is a beautiful riverfront park in Clarksville, Tennessee, where we'll have both, outdoor opportunities, but also a great indoor area. So Friday night at the park, then Saturday we'll have sessions that'll be right here in Freedom Point, as well as tours that go all over the region. So see all of that information on our website. Then at the end of September, our Eastern Region meeting is really going to be a tour of a lot of fun horticulture events. So we'll see greenhouses, herb farms, vegetable operations. I'm working on the planning right now with the host. We might even see some sorghum processing that's going on for molasses. So it's really going to be kind of a fun fall horticulture in a pretty rural part of Tennessee. Oh, and I think there's probably going to be some vineyards as well. So registration is not open for that yet, but it will be in a few weeks, and we look forward to those fun events with folks from across the state. Now today we are live from Knoxville, Tennessee, and El Paso County, Texas. And so at the bottom half of the hour, we're going to go right outside the building where I'm sitting and see some cut flower and Master Gardener demonstration efforts and hear about their community impact. That's going to be second. But first, we are really excited to welcome some of our friends from El Paso County, Texas. And I'm going to turn the floor over to Jennifer Salter, who I hope you already know. She is the president of our Rutherford County Master Gardener Association and a really valued member of our Master Gardener work group and a transfer from the Texas Master Gardener program. So she's connecting with some of her friends, many, folks that she graduated intern training with. So I'm going to go ahead and stop my share now, Jennifer, and let you introduce us to our special guests.
Thanks, Natalie. Good morning, everyone. Welcome, El Paso. Hi. As I said, this is El Paso County in Texas. And if those of you who don't know where El Paso is, this is Texas. It's right here on that little tip. You can hold it. That's how you hold Texas up. El Paso, you hold Texas up. So I'm a transfer from El Paso County. That's where I became a Master Gardener. So a lot of these folks sitting there are very familiar to me. Denise Rodriguez, who is going to lead the talk today from Texas. She is the county director and the Master Gardener coordinator. So she wears a lot of hats. So without further ado, I'm going to turn over to El Paso and we get to enjoy what it's like to garden there. And yes, there are flowers, so we'll get to see that.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Great to be with you. We're in our training room this morning and we have a few Master Gardeners that are joining us. I'm counting 7 Master Gardeners, so it's really great to be back face to face with everyone, slowly but surely. Thank you for that very nice introduction, Jennifer. And we are a lot of different takes on Texas out here. We are still part of Texas, but we are an international city right on the border. We're sandwiched right between New Mexico and we are a military town as well, very culturally vibrant. So it's a really great place to be practicing horticulture and engaging with Master Gardeners. We're about 100 strong certified Master Gardeners in my county, and we teeter around that 100 mark. But we have a group of non-certified Master Gardeners that had a hard time last year certifying, and then we have our interns that we usually typically train about 25 volunteers a year. So at any given time, I have about 150 Master Gardeners on my radar. We are in the middle of our monsoon season right now, so believe it or not, to kind of put you into some context, we get about 8 inches of rain a year. And last Sunday, we had a 1 hour rainfall event that, depending on where you live, either side of the mountain, you either got 25 or up to 50% of your annual rainfall in 1 hour. So I'm going to let you digest that for just a little while to see exactly what flash floods can do in our area, but also what we can be able to reap from that very, very infrequent rain. So I know we were talking about some flowers and vegetables, but today we're going to go ahead and concentrate just a little bit on what we have done recently. As I mentioned to you all, we are geographically isolated and very culturally rich. There are a big need of oops, let me get this going here, give me 1 second. A big need of local food production in our area. Even though we are an urban center, we have about 800,000 people in the county, but we are really strong in agriculture with our two predominant crops, our pecans and cotton. So we have to really balance that along with not having enough rainfall. We have to surface water irrigate with our river water. But however, with such a big county, we also have people, we have food insecurity, we have need, we have hunger, and we want people want us to grow vegetables. And it's just almost physically impossible to grow vegetables in not just our heat, but also our lack of water. So really what we did is we looked at this as an opportunity to be able to look at community gardens and having that as a teaching and demonstration area so that folks that wanted to container garden or do some small production, vegetable production, would be able to do so in raised beds and containers. So we'll talk a little bit about what we did to be able to do that. Good. So really, as you all are part of the Master Gardener program, you know that you are very closely entwined to the county government because of the support that we each have with our local government. So essentially what we did is we partnered with our local JPD program on here, and these kids were part of the juvenile probation department to be able to get their community service hours. And they worked alongside our master gardeners as well as our extension agents to be able to build this teaching garden. So we definitely got that engagement from the community from the get-go. And essentially what we did is we tried to really look at not just gardening as a whole, but also what happens after that production is completed and directly into consumers. So that's where we engaged our family and community health agents to be able to give these gardening lessons with parents and their children in the garden themselves. And the significance and the takeaway from this is the fact that the students that were part of these probation programs, they had to bring their parents with them to complete these hours. And unfortunately, this was the only 1 or 2 hours a week that this child spent with their mother. So that even just made that driven that really home on there to make that experience as pleasant and positive as possible. And after these grants are done and completed, you know, we're left with this garden and to be able to look at what do we do with it next. So our take on this as the extension service is really to build a garden resource center for the community as well. Got some great vegetables, got some great artists in our group too. So you can, if you look really closely, you can see there's a smiley face hidden amongst the tomatoes and squash in one of these photographs. But it's really to be able to look and work with master gardeners and challenge them to be able to do that. And essentially our garden resource center at Escalante Park, which is a county park, is kind of that hub, and we have these spokes throughout the community as well with our city and city parks and rec department that we work with. We work really closely with the junior college out here in their culinary arts program as well. So on the bottom center of your screen, you'll see that we did a lot of work with microgreens to be able to look and kind of, you know, tickle the feathers of the culinary experts, but at the same time, be able to introduce that they can grow microgreens, even if it may be in a controlled environment. Up in our colorful areas, we have some in-ground beds as well, and some surrounding rural communities in our counties, in unincorporated areas that have a historical value and a very strong ties to the agricultural community, but doing gardens like that. We also work with some state senators in Texas here that are part of the El Paso delegation to be able to put a large culinary garden out at one of the targeted schools in our county. It's in a historically underserved area, but it has a great significance in our area in El Paso as well. So that was able to bring extension and master gardeners and our efforts through these certain political offices into a brighter light of what the extension service does, providing that education as well. And then we've also worked with a lot of nonprofits and with our Speakers Bureau as well. So this is the beginning of what the garden looked like in probably early 2012. So this is a very old aerial shot on there. This was before drones became so very popular. So this is pretty much a master gardener on the cherry picker up taking this photograph that she told me about after the fact. But as you can see, the garden itself has very humble beginnings with about 16 center block raised beds. And then we put in different elements with square foot gardening and then container gardening using repurposed materials. Essentially what we want people to do is be able to come out to the park, visit the park, talk to master gardeners, be a part of demonstrations, and take any and all of these elements back into their urban production. And those urban productions can be at their place of worship. It can be on public school campuses. It can even be in some small tract farm areas that we have surrounding the county park where they are. They still have irrigation rights to be able to do some in-ground production as well. So essentially what it is a clearinghouse of ideas with showcasing our best practices. And as you all know, that there is just no way that we'll be able to do any of these without the engagement and support and dedication of our master gardeners that are out here. And you know that we are a people oriented organization agency, and we have just a great group out here of these folks on there. A lot of master gardeners that I've seen that really have gone in being involved in the teaching and demonstration garden have been a lot of our retired educators, because you'll see here in a couple more slides really what we focused on doing. But before we do that, we need to be able to engage our master gardeners and train them. Our specialist training, quote unquote, through the state, we call that advanced training now, but we can certainly have our Junior Master Gardener program that I'm not sure you all are familiar with, but it is the international JMG program. So it's with educators and it's also with vegetable specialists throughout the state. So we have right over here on our right-hand side, our state specialists working on vegetable production. And very early on, we did an Asian vegetable trial out here. So we were a secondary site, and it was great to be able to grow a lot of different bok choys. And at the end of the season, we had a great tasting and field day. The curricula that we use out here is the Learn, Grow, Eat, and Go program. It's a 10-week nutrition and physical activity curricula. And essentially what we do is we get the kids to start off by planting seeds in containers all the way up to harvest. Along the way, they learn not just about horticulture and nutrition, but there's also some really great geography lessons, literature lessons that they get throughout there. So it's really that hands-on component that really makes programs like this thrive and be built into the community. And yeah, there's just no better way. I know that I'm preaching to the choir this morning, but there's really just no better way than to actually learn by doing. And essentially what we were able to do is have these field days. And for us, because we're in the desert, we really talk a lot about environmental stewardship and being a good steward of water resources. And here we have a rainwater harvesting demonstration and activity. And essentially the takeaway from that is that we all need to work together to preserve that water to meet a goal. And a lot of times when we do all these activities, it's great and it's fun, but we need to be able to sustain that. So through different iterations of the garden that we have to present day, as we partnered with Whole Foods out here. So we did like a 5% giving day with them. In turn, we did information tables out at the store, and then the gross sales receipts for that one day at that one store went directly to the master gardeners. So it's a great way to be able to have our resources on here. Like I said, we partner with nonprofit organizations as well. We have our chapter of our West Texas Urban Forestry Council that donated some money to be able to build a greenhouse out here. And in return, master gardeners will grow out some tree seedlings for some windbreak or just tree canopy programs for our urban areas out here. So we definitely are always looking at ways to be able to train our master gardeners, but also to engage the public as well. This is what it looks, the greenhouse looks like, and I'm actually stepping in for the current master gardener president this morning, Mr. Ignacio Munoz, a professional engineer, and you can see that in his work, and now as a retired person, he really led the construction of the greenhouse itself. And then we have our propagation specialists who come in and work on propagating the plants for the demonstration gardens throughout the city. And then, of course, that takes it a step further with our vegetable specialists in the ground to be able to grow these vegetables forward. So I would probably say this is almost a current picture with our pergola that we use, and that's the anchor when the kids come in. That's the go-to space for them to meet, and that was what we got through the Whole Foods partnership. And then the greenhouse that was funded by Master Gardeners and the Urban Forestry Council as well. That's where we're at in regards to some of our programs on there. We always do a lot of, we kind of keep our local mass media engaged in the program itself. It's really important. It's really fun for these TV personalities to come out and harvest the carrots. It's such a novel experience for them. We know that master gardeners are out in their grubby clothes, just getting the work done, but it really makes for really great TV. And you know what, we really we'll take it what we can get and really try to engage the public. Being a lot of folks in the city really far removed from production, even like I said, even with such strong agricultural ties in our county, it really is difficult on there. That's us. We even do things like edible flowers as well with our partners again at the culinary school. And not to discount anything that we do, we've really pivoted towards virtual programming and hybrid programming. We do a lot of things on, we like Eventbrite. That's the platform that I'm able to capture my demographics, to be able to report those, because we all know that that's really important to be able to tell our story. And hits and likes are great, but registrations and demographics to meet, public, that's what keeps us accountable to our local, state, and federal entities. So we're doing that, but we're inching back into having and hosting more open houses in the future. And I do want to say that I'm really proud of the Master Gardeners, in addition to working through the pandemic and working with this vegetable production and having this demonstration garden. The question that you may have may be, well, where does all of these vegetables go once they're harvested? Great, we can grow them, we can put them X number of days in the ground, and X number of days later they'll be harvested. But the Master Gardeners really spearheaded a program this year to be able to donate these vegetables. But that was the original one, was to donate to the food bank. However, we had a lot of logistical issues for the food banks. They were overwhelmed with the need of the community with the pandemic, and they stopped accepting any kind of fresh vegetables because they just couldn't handle it. They needed canned and shelf-stable items to be able to fill the boxes to meet the needs. So really what the Master Gardeners did is that they developed a subscription-based model, something similar to what you all may be familiar with, like the Blue Apron or whatever those kits that you get with meals to make at your home. But also agriculturally, it's what we would call a CSA, community supported agriculture. So essentially, members of the community were able to buy shares of the garden, if you will, for a subscription-based model. And to put that into context, it's an 8-week model that costs $150 at the onset of the season. So essentially, we were able to get that revenue at the beginning of the season to sustain our efforts. And then every week from that harvest, however big or small or catastrophic or a bumper crop that we had, we were able to fulfill those boxes throughout the season. And I'm proud to say that we are on week 6 of that 8-week journey today, as a matter of fact. And it's been a great way to engage people. And we also sneak in a couple of nutrition components, recipes from our counterparts in our family consumer sciences agents, because it's a great way to be able to showcase not just the vegetable production, but also the health and nutrition that goes along with that. So we are not just a little sleepy town here on the far banks of West Texas. We got a lot going on here. And I sure do. This is the end of my, very standard talk, but I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. This is my contact information if you need to reach me, as well as the Master Gardeners. But I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, and then I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to ask maybe our host. I haven't checked the chat box, but I'd be more than happy to entertain any questions that you may have, or pass it over to any Master Gardener that may know more than I do on specific questions. So,
Denise, we did have a question about the use of the cinder blocks, and I know that's what we started with in Ascarity, but gradually you guys put in more things to show how many different types of raised beds you can have.
Yeah, absolutely. We use a square foot gardening principles too. So we actually used plywood, 2x6s, to do the 4x4 beds.
Yeah, I noticed you have some old tires as well that have been.
Yeah, we still have tires.
Yeah.
We still have they're like little party tubs. We have a canoe. It kind of like slip that, put that canoe in there without saying much about it, but it's a repurposed container within a container to attract more so pollinators, if you will.
Right. Let's see what's in the chat. Everybody loves your containers.
Oh,
Jennifer, this
Yes,
is
sir.
Art Corral. I'm from El Paso too, past
Yeah.
past president there. But also there's a section right down the center of that Ascarity garden that they have constructed and made an accessible garden. And that one is basically all made out of wood. But our current president, who is an engineer, is great at building things. So he actually has built, with the help of all the master gardeners, an accessible garden, and that's basically to allow people or to teach people, not only the ones that are have physical challenges, but also the people that serve them as to what they can do. For instance, at their particular facility where they serve these people, how can they build some of these flower beds or what do you call it, vegetable beds, to allow those people in the wheelchair or that have certain physical challenges that they can still garden. And it's a very good way for them to do so, because we all know that when you're gardening, it's not only good for you physically, but mentally, because it does serve both purposes and all of that. Right down the center of that, there is a section now. It's completely changed from what you saw in that picture, but it does have a section for accessible gardening.
Okay, great, thanks. There is a question here. Somebody asks, why did you run the cattle panel from the edge of one bed to another bed?
Oh, that's a great question, because we had a lot of kids coming in through there, and we want the kids to be engaged, but we also don't want them to trample the muskmelon or the cucumber vines. So we thought that at this point, that by adding a vertical element, it adds not just a design element, but it also keeps anybody from trampling the vines. But it's certainly 100% functional.
And then there's one last question here, which I want to know the answer to. Does Ascarity mean anything?
Oh, yeah. Well, and I appreciate you pronouncing that Ascarate, because I'm brown, I can't say Ascarity. But Ascarate is the last surname of a very prominent older family in El Paso in the border region. So it's a last name, but it's the largest county park. It's the park itself is over 400 acres with a 18-hole golf course and a lake in the middle of it. So it's certainly the main park, and we hope to make it more so the main park in El Paso.
That's great, thank you. I don't see any other questions, but take a look at the chat box because there's some great comments.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna pop that up. So I'm gonna.
Thank you so much. It was so good to see you guys and to tell everybody about what you do in El Paso. Everything looks terrific, and hope you'll stick around and watch the rest. See what's going on here in Tennessee.
Absolutely.
And turn it back to Natalie.
Thanks for having us, and thank you to Master Gardeners for making all of this happen.
Yes, thank you so much. That was awesome. And I can say it was really fun to have you all in the room, because we could hear you laughing and talking, and it just made it feel like we really had a whole state to state visit going on. So that was awesome.
Thank
Yeah.
you. We're rowdy, so we're gonna mute.
All right. That's perfect. And we're really excited to then move to the second half of our visit today, and that is with our Knox County Master Gardeners. And so I'm actually on the west side of Knoxville right now, and we are at the site of Concord Community Garden. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of give a shout out to Rylan. Oh, I just saw he turned on his camera, so I'm going to spotlight that video for you all, and we are going to pass the baton to Rylan, who is our horticulture agent and master garden coordinator here in Knox County, and let y'all take us on the Cut Flower Community Garden second half of our visit.
All right, thanks, Natalie. All right, so I'm going to jump around the camera here. I'm Ryland Thompson. I'm a Knox County Extension Agent. I'm the Master Gardener Coordinator for Knox County. So we're glad to have you all visiting us with Concord virtually today. We have a lot of volunteers here that are not on camera, that are about to be on camera. But the first volunteer is Mike Smith. He's our project leader out here. And Mike's going to give you a brief history of Concord, kind of talk, what led into the flower side of it, and then he'll introduce Sue, who is over the flower ministry. So, Mike, I'm gonna hand it to you. I'm gonna get back behind the camera here.
All right. First, thanks, Natalie, for coming out here today and doing the Zoom with our gardens and our flowers. 2013, we started. A master gardener at that time, Harry Tucker, and I volunteered then with Society of St. Andrew, and we got excited about trying to maybe start a garden. And we talked to folks in church, and they said, yeah, go for it. Well, we started a 70-foot by 90-foot garden, and all of a sudden it had just exploded. We had tomatoes and peppers and cucumbers, and we had to put some flowers out here to bring the pollinators in. And that first year, we did about 2,600 pounds. I also became a master gardener after that because I was given the letter and application and stamped envelope and to do this. So I did. As the time moved on, 2014, 15, I guess is when we probably started with the flower ministry. We had Sue, and so Sue came out and was more interested in flowers than the garden part. And we had enough master gardeners that were out that liked to play with the flowers. And so Sue said, let's try do some ministry with some flowers. And she now has, and I'm going to turn it over to her now. She has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 ladies that she takes care of that helps her out every week.
We're a team of 4, and we have been working together for 3 years. And this is Sharon, and she lives in the neighborhood, which is nice to have that relationship. And she's able to deliver some flowers to neighbors as they need them for kind of an elf anyway. And so she has many different varieties in her yard. She's very willing to augment our flower spread. And there's Jill. And she's a landscape designer. She has background in horticulture. She's been a master gardener in Georgia. And she's really our storehouse of knowledge for what plant goes where, what kind of requirements they have for light and water. That one, using on her. And there's Jackie, and she's also a master gardener. She's been a master gardener from up north. And she's very enthusiastic. She has a lot of energy. When it's time to plant something, she's doing it already. So, and she also brings a great deal of material from her own yard. She has a great variety of things she's planting.
Awesome. So can you tell us a little bit about, how you got started, why you started, and some key lessons you might have learned early on?
I was in a meeting with the garden committee in 2019. And I was eating a cookie and I was nodding and smiling. It was a good cookie. And then he comes up to me after the meeting and he said, when I made the announcement and I looked around the room, you were the only person nodding and smiling. So I was it. And then he had a series of terrible mishaps. He had already read a book. I have the name of that somewhere. The Flower Farmer by Lynn Buzinski. And John is actually a farmer himself and a beekeeper. And he's very interested in sustainability, excuse me, pollinators and that kind of thing. So he had already started some flowers. This woman recommends what to start with. And he'd started and he kept killing them, flat after flat. And John would order, because it was cheap, 500 seeds at a time. So I think he felt he had jinxed it. And he had his own greenhouse arrangement. And he just said, I'm handing it over to you, Sue. And I really had to decide, did I want to step up to the plate? I mean, I hadn't even done this before. Or did I just say no? And I thought, I'm gonna do this for those people because they need this. So I started, and the first delivery, we were told Kate wanted to start on May 1st, which is May Day. And they want to have flowers for the participants. They don't call them patients, they are participants. And so I had 45 flowers. I had peonies from my yard and an iris from this horrendous iris patch that was 7 years old. And nobody had done anything with it for 7 years. So they were gross and growing together and covered with bugs and stuff. And I went through there and got what I could out of it. And that was the first delivery, May 1st, 2019.
And what were some of the other earlier crops you grew as well when you really started getting into it?
Fortunately, John had some that he did not kill, and those are staples. Everyone who's doing this needs to know you need these three: zinnias, celosia, and snapdragons. And those will bloom all summer, and they are cut and come again. So you can't cut them too much. Keep going with them. And they're easy care. They love the sun. They love the heat. The variety of snapdragons that we're using, which would be the Madam Butterflies and the Potomac varieties. There are other snapdragons that come up in the spring, and they're gone by the time we're really rolling here. And then we just kept adding. John added a bed of sunflower, which unfortunately need to be watered. If temperature hits over 80 degrees, they must be watered. And so every night I was out here watering sunflowers. But let me think, what else did we have? We hadn't started with perennials yet. And so we kind of raided. There was a garden that was put in at the Girl Scout project as a pollinator garden. It was designed by Janie Bittner, who is a specialist in Tennessee native plants. And she's also my sister. And she had designed it. And they kind of were letting it get overgrown. And so yarrow, fortunately, was blooming its head off. It's gorgeous yellow yarrow. Lifts your heart up to see it. And so we started harvesting that. And then Sherry came on board. And she took over the hillside bed, which has daisies and other things that she also put in from her yard.
We've got a quick question for you. So we heard the two Madam Butterfly was one of the snapdragons. And what was the second?
Potomac.
Potomac. Okay.
So now can we talk a little bit about the expansion? And as we do that, let's drift down more towards the lower end of the garden so we can kind of highlight it. But how do you branch out to expand your flower collections? What flowers have you found simplest and best to use from your personal garden? Which some of that you've already hit on. And then what are some of the benefits of you using herbs in these arrangements? So,
well, we expanded because there's another master gardener, Andrea Van Dyke, who works in this garden. And she has a very good connection with garden centers and Bonnie Plant. And one of the garden centers, Mayo, said, would you like all our seeds at the end of the season? And just donated their botanical interest seeds. And so every seed packet that said, good as a cut block, we tried. And I have my little list here. What did we try? Sweet peas, snapdragon, status, painted daisy, dwarf sunflowers, giant zinnias, chocolate lace flowers, Queen Anne's lace. That was mostly Jackie bringing that in. Sweet William and Steeman, which turns out to be a native, and it does very well. It's a cut flower, it's beautiful, and it goes all year. Calendula, we did cosmos. And the thing that I learned was you don't want to have too much. I want to focus on a few. And we expanded to perennials because there were some gaps with the annuals. It was slow getting started. We had a weird year. Every year is a weird year now. And so things were getting killed with late frosts, or we were having droughts. So we realized that some sturdy perennials were needed. And we did calla lilies. Turned out really easy care, partly because we're very fortunate in this garden. We have all raised beds and we have irrigation, which just can't beat that.
Calla, that's pretty high end. That's like high quality florist material right there.
Celia, who is actually the director of Kate's, when she saw the callas, she said, oh, they're gorgeous. And so we have planted more, just to kind of, we know if she has that response, they're probably all having that response. We try to do some education. We try to label a lot of the plants. We expanded the last two beds down at the front with peonies. We had a very generous benefactor who said, what would you like? Because budget is a problem. And we had a couple requests. One was a native oak leaf hydrangea called peewee, I think. And it's the great size for bouquet. One of the things I like to bring in for bouquets was my hydrangeas, but they get kind of big, and you can have like 3 hydrangeas, and that's your whole arrangement. There's nothing else going on. But this one is just the right size to put in to complement other flowers, and it's a native. So we wanted that one, and we wanted a peony because definitely that gets a great response. And we have worked out a way, we found a way, it's online, how to preserve peonies that you cut in May all the way through August. they built us the beds down in front of that tree, which is very interesting. It in itself is deemed a wildlife habitat. This is one of the the first pollinator bed, which Lisa has put together with Heather.
Dill is a big one for swallowtail. We have several varieties of milkweed in there for monarchs because you have to have milkweed for monarch. So we have 3 different varieties, I believe. We've got chop or swamp, we've got common, but the milkweed's finally starting to bloom in there. And then we have some different herbs that attract swallowtails and different butterflies. So the whole goal of our purple garden is for the butterflies. Well, any pollinators, but mostly the butterflies. Right now, we're seeing a lot of bees.
One of the big problems with flowers is the transportation. And I actually took the flower farming course this year in January. And everyone was asking, oh, give us a secret to that. And this is a woman who's been flower farming for 10 years and delivering to grocery stores and florists and so on. And she's like, oh, it's kind of all homemade peanut butter and duct tape together. So one of the problems, particularly with iris, is that they don't transport very well. They will just ship and they'll knock you just petal to petal. They'll get a crease in it and then it looks really good. So Sherry developed a way to transport iris. She takes a bucket. You want to come up and talk about it? And you iris carry.
Oh, well, it's pretty simple. Get a bucket and just take masking tape and just enough room for each flower, so you have plenty of room between the flowers, so that your holes are pretty small. So just do a weaving of all that, and you've got a way to transport. So, and we've utilized that off and on for a number of flowers. Yeah.
And Sherry has a cool story. She actually has an extension background.
Oh yeah. Back in 40 years ago. The middle of Nebraska, if anybody's familiar with that. Yeah, sandhills. So.
And she is a volunteer with Concord who works with Master Gardeners here.
Yes.
So, we're going to keep recruiting her. Maybe like Mike, Marcia will give her a self-addressed stamped application envelope.
Yeah. I just work with all these wonderful Master Gardeners. So it's fabulous. I glean a lot of information from these women. So, and then whoever's here. So, yeah. It's great. Love it.
So any closing thoughts or suggestions for others that might be interested in doing a similar project?
Start small. Jill says manage expectations, because the better you do, if you do a really good job, and of course we're women, we're going to do 150%. Then people just take it for granted and they'll ask for more and more and more. So you set your limits. And then again, start small and you'll have just your basics to begin with. You want to have some perennials instead of just annuals like we started with. Have some yarrow, I would highly recommend. And
daisies. Those are my favorite.
Daisies are perfect. And that's about, and label all your things, because everyone's going to be walking off your stuff. Everything we have is labeled Flower Ministry.
And there was a question, where do you deliver your flowers to again?
Right across the street to the church building, where the Concord Adult Day Enrichment Services are.
Yeah, so CADES. Yeah.
And I'm going to let them take over, my ladies, my floristas, we call ourselves, and show you how they do.
Bring them all up here. Everyone take off and gathers, and then someone's in charge of like stripping them down and cutting them underwater and counting them. We have to count them, and we bring them from home also. So we just go cut.
We're using Dollar Tree buckets for cheap. And they hook into things. They hook into this debris wagon that was donated to us.
Right.
And it allows us to transport things very easily instead of trying to hold these in our hands and having water everywhere. It's a problem with flowers.
It is. So, yeah. Okay. So when you're processing, when you're actually harvesting the flower, we generally rinse them off, because we're working with the CADES people and they don't want to have ants crawling all over them. So somebody rinses off over there, and then we will just put them in underwater and cut at a 45-degree angle, and then immediately put it in a bucket of water with a pitcher of water with hydrate. So, and then we just keep
it at Costco.
Yeah, at Costco. I think we've got it right here. This is what we use, the hydrator. And so we do that with all of them. And our system is that the uncut ones are there. And once they get cut and counted, they go on in the wagon. So it's great.
And then we collect all of there's a lot of waste, just to warn you,
Yeah.
there's a lot of waste when you're stripping stems off of every one of these and cutting stems. So we put it in a bucket and it gets put in the compost every year.
Not everything always works. Sometimes we ditch it. But, yeah.
I think they said we've done about, how many thousand have we done so far this year?
3,000.
What is?
3,449?
Yeah.
Not counting.
As of last week,
So-
not counting all these.
Yeah. So,
And there was a question for clarification on what you put in the water again.
oh,
You can
It's
get
actually
actually
what you
hydrator,
do,
but this
yeah.
is cheaper. It's at Costco.
yeah.
And they're little packets, individual packets, so you don't have to wet the whole thing. And we just tear them open, and you don't even use the whole packet. You'll use maybe like a teaspoon out of this packet per bucket. Not all of them need this kind of hydrator, which especially is needed for hydrangeas though, and people really like this, and those are nice filler. We do have what we call dirty drinkers. It's any kind of stem that has hair on it. So zinnias, sunflowers, and Rebecca. And the problem with that is they collect bacteria, and it makes the water really gross really quickly. And bacteria is going to kill your plant. So everything is sterilized. We take these buckets out and scrub them really well so that there isn't any debris getting up into the flower stem. And I actually use liquid Lysol, and I'll disinfect each one of them, and the bucket we use, and the tools we use. Lysol is better than Clorox because it doesn't pit your tools, but it usually has a smell to it. And so when we're doing the dirty drinkers, we're putting maybe 3 or 4 drops of Clorox in the water. Not enough that you can smell it, but it's going to kill any bacteria in those particular kinds. We also have a special process for poppies, which we have tried for years to grow these things for our veterans. And we couldn't grow them, but we found someone who did, and she did a spectacular job with Flanders field poppies. And so they're wimpy stems. So I don't really recommend them for most programming, but if you'll just do a vase for them, they're fine. Turn them upside down. It's a 2-person job. The other person has a long stem lighter, and then you just very gently sear around the edges because poppies are exuding this milky substance, and it clogs up the water and kills everything in the vase. So if you'll sear that though, leaving the center open, not charred, they'll be able to last. Poppies are very ephemeral. They're known as one of the most ephemeral. They'll last about 24 hours if you don't treat them. If you treat them, you give about 5 days. But if you'll treat them, cauterize them that way, and put them in distilled water, we've had them last 10 days. So that's really phenomenal.
So sometimes you even bring in some DI water for this.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's get Sue in front of the flower. So, yeah.
Their flowers. It's
Yeah.
And then we take it. Remember, it's nice because Jackie custom made this for us, where we can hook these Dollar Tree pitcher handles right over the edge, and that keeps them steady. Because when you're dealing with water, everything's flopping, everything's sloshing, and this really helps us keep them steady.
Right, we've got crates too for our car, and these hook in your crates.
Yeah. So the car stories are some of my favorite because a lot of these are coming from their houses. And so there's a whole process to make sure that it's high quality stuff that gets transported here.
And I do hydrator at the house too. And we've all flooded our cars out trying to transport.
Yes, it really
Because
is.
our stress has evolved all the time.
But I'll use like a sponge. You can get it at Joanne by the yard. And it's nice because it's a sponge. You can collapse it down and put it in around your vase. And then as it sits there, it'll expand, and that's holding your vase in place. So you use, you'll have to eat a whole package of Noni's biscotti or Milanos from Costco. They have these plastic containers they come in, and they're just right to stick one of these in with
The sacrifices of service.
But you can even pop a vase inside these. So if you want to transport,
Yes.
the flowers arrangements, that works too.
And one thing that I kind of wanted to bring out is that you see these beautiful arrangements behind us, but actually for the most part, the ladies are processing and taking 2 cades unarranged.
Right.
which for some of these artists is actually a challenge. But if you're thinking about flower ministry and you're thinking, oh gosh, like I'm not artistic, much of this is horticultural.
Oh,
Yeah. Right, yeah.
we make some arrangements, but
Well, I feel that they're the people that are really talented, these three. And I feel bad. Part of having a flower ministry is having a good team. And they're a really good team. And that's the creative part that they really long to do. So we've tried to increase what we do. And part of it is to give ready-made bouquets to the called the TLC ministry that goes out every Thursday morning. It's meals for shut-ins. And we've started giving them flowers once a month. These ladies, not me, these ladies have designed with our flowers, and we'll leave a little note, the lavender and love from the CUMC garden. And that was our first delivery because we couldn't get around the whole water sloshing thing. If we had little vases, how are we going to get the flowers to them? And then we realized lavender is fine if it's dry. So we had a set number of stocks. So we have like 40, 20. Like 500. So I had a huge lavender bush, and now we have one planted in our garden too. It's lavender grosso. Best one, has a long stem, lasts a long time, and very fragrant. And it grows in wet weather and it grows in dry weather too. It's a cross between for all of us on here who have killed lavender frequently in our gardens. Yeah. It's easy and it's prolific, and so we just bundled them up, dry bundles, and had one bundle go out with each meal. So that worked really well. And the last time we actually were very daring and went to Dollar Tree and bought 25 vases, and then packaged them with the foam. And actually, I was at one point bending up cardboard boxes to kind of make something that would hold that vase in place. And all of those went out. And the gratifying thing for us was within about 30 minutes of the first one going out, the lady in charge of the meals got a call. And she said, I want to thank you for the meal, but I really love it. That was,
I mean,
yeah.
very rewarding. It's really rewarding to do this.
And we love having the preschoolers come over. There's a preschool also in the church, and 2 or 3 years old. So they're learning their colors, and we've got all the zinnias, and we'll let them pick a zinnia, and we'll cut it for them, and they'll take it to their mom, and mom is so happy I got a flower, and the kid is happy, mom likes my flower. So it's like happy, happy, happy all around. Well, tell us the glad story. Yeah. I had to plant gladiolas because they were kind of younger, and we had a bed that was right in the middle of the garden. It had a lot of hoses around. It was really inconvenient bed, but I thought, well, we'll put them in there. So they very diligently planted these properly, and they bloomed, and they must have made babies because we disassembled the bed so that we could get the houses around, and we recycled the soil. Of course, we did. Too. So we keep finding gladiolas popping up all over the garden where that soil was recycled. So the flower crew just spreading the love. But I really, these ladies are really the backbone of it. And part of having a good flower ministry is having a really good crew. And you'll need someone who knows about cutting and processing and harvesting flowers. And we're really doing it as a crop. We're not doing it for enjoyment. And there's a difference between a home gardener and a flower farmer. Oh, this has been awesome. Do you have any suggestions or final words for folks who might want to add cut flowers to their community garden or anything else you want to leave folks with?
Go for it.
Yeah, do it.
Well,
Yeah.
plant the easy things. You want rudbeckia, you want daisy, yeah, the easy things. And then if you want to get into dahlias, I have someone here who really wants to do dahlias. They're fussy. They need to be lifted. They need to be stored. They need to be processed. Right. Iris are easy, but again, the transportation is a problem, and that always has to be in the back of your head. How are we going to get these to where they need to go? Oh, if you can pull off the peonies, you can do dahlias.
We just have to drive it in the wagon with the 4 of us.
Yes, it's so easy for us. I have to admit. Perfect. So there you go, fresh from the experts. Just jump in, do it. Try some easy stuff. Hey, you should pan around, Ryland, and show. We are pretty excited. We actually have a crowd here this morning. We're so used to doing these visits, with just like 3 people or something. So it's pretty exciting to have a bunch of the rest of the Knox County crew.
here with us. Thanks so much to Mike and Marcia and Caesar and the whole crew here, and especially for you ladies to come and do a special demonstration for us here. Very, very impressive, and we hope we've planted a few seeds. Yeah. Thanks so much for joining us on our July Friday Focus live from Texas and Tennessee. We're so thankful for our Texas Master Gardener friends for joining in, as well as the great crew here at Concord Community Gardens. And we look forward to seeing you all on our next Friday Focus on September the 24th, focusing on arboretums and Master Gardeners.